Several months later, Han Li and Shi Chuankong had arrived at a highland with black soil stretching as far as the eyes could see. It was a very dry and arid place, and the occasional gust of wind would sweep through, raising up huge clouds of black dust. Upon reaching this place, Shi Chuankong was clearly looking a lot more relaxed, and Han Li was also feeling quite relieved upon seeing this. After departing from Preeminent City, the two of them had been constantly on the move. Thankfully, Shi Chuankong was quite familiar with this area, and the two of them had changed directions several times on the way here, while also avoiding the usage of teleportation formations for fear of being intercepted. Their cautious approach appeared to be paying off, and the journey thus far proved to be quite smooth. They hadn't encountered any more of Shi Jianfeng's forces, but nor had they received any further news from Shi Pakong. Around 2 more months passed by, and on this day, 2 enormous mountains appeared on the horizon up ahead. Nestled between the 2 mountains was a black city, and Han Li could tell that it was quite a large one. They were already deep in the highlands at this point, and the environment here had become even more unforgiving, with gusts of ferocious black wind sweeping through the air in all directions, sweeping up pieces of debris as large as small mountains. Anyone below the nascent soul stage would undoubtedly be killed in this hostile environment, but of course, a storm of this degree could simply be ignored by Han Li and Shi Chuankong. In contrast, the area in a radius of hundreds of kilometers around the city nestled between the pair of mountains was very serene and peaceful, and it seemed that the storm raging outside was being kept out by some type of restriction. "We're finally here," Shi Chuankong declared with an elated expression. "This is Grain Mountain City. The climate here is terrible, and the devilish qi isn't very abundant, nor are there any favorable geographic features in the area like ore mines. Why did you decide to construct a city here?" Han Li asked with a puzzled expression. "I didn't construct Grain Mountain City. It was once inhabited by the Sand Clump tribe. Tens of thousands of years ago, they moved away from the city and I purchased it. It took a great deal of effort to mold it into its current form. The environment here is indeed quite hostile, but it also serves as a natural barrier of sorts, does it not?" Shi Chuankong countered with a smile. "I don't think that's the key factor that influenced your decision. According to the map of the Devil Realm that you gave me, Grain Mountain City is situated at a point where the routes leading to several major cities meet, and it's also not far away from the 10 Hazards mountain range, so it's an ideal business location," Han Li analyzed. "You truly know me better than anyone else, Brother Li," Shi Chuankong chuckled. "Are we just going in like this? This city may be your territory, but you've been away for a long time, so there's no guarantee that things are still the same compared with when you left it," Han Li said. "It'll be fine. I've already contacted my trusted subordinates in the city, and they've assured me that the city is still untouched for now," Shi Chuankong replied with a confident smile. "All right, I'll follow your lead then," Han Li said with a nod. As they approached the city, it began to rapidly expand in their field of view, and even though the city was made to look rather diminutive compared with the 2 mountains on either side of it, it was still quite an enormous and majestic city. The walls of the city were thousands of feet tall, and streaks of light were frequently entering and exiting the city, containing different types of flying boats. Some giant carriages had also begun appearing on the ground, and to Han Li's surprise, it appeared far more lively and bustling here than even Black Weasel City. As Shi Chuankong gazed upon the giant city up ahead, a hint of excitement and pride began to surface in his eyes. In order to avoid attracting attention, Shi Chuankong intentionally slowed down his flying carriage, so it took them a while to reach the edge of the city. Looking in from the outside, the city was filled with tall buildings and orderly streets that were teeming with activity, far more so than in Black Weasel City and Preeminent City. There were also around a dozen giant jade pillars hovering in the air above the city, and all of the pillars were etched with countless black runes, giving them the appearance of some type of formation tool. Around the pillars was an enormous black light barrier that encompassed the entire city, as well as a large area outside of it, keeping the ferocious storms at bay. The city had 8 gates situated in the east, west, south, north, southeast, southwest, northeast, and northwest. At this moment, all 8 gates were open, and there were long lines of flying boats and flying carriages waiting at the gates to enter the city. It looks like even 8 gates is still not enough. I'll have to construct a few more city gates so that people can enter and exit the city faster, Shi Chuankong murmured to himself upon seeing this. Instead of descending onto the ground to join the line, the flying carriage flew straight toward the interior of the city at Shi Chuankong's behest. There were many guards clad in suits of gray armor patrolling the city, and as soon as they spotted the approaching flying carriage, a group of guards immediately sprang into action, with their leader yelling, "Who goes there?" Shi Chuankong stowed the flying carriage away, then flipped a hand over to summon a purple badge that was giving off a hazy purple glow. The expression on the patrol commander's face instantly changed drastically upon seeing this, and he hurriedly extended a respectful bow as he said, "Please forgive me, esteemed guest." He then pulled out a black flag and chanted a quick incantation before waving it through the air, releasing a streak of black light that vanished into the black light barrier up ahead. An opening that was several dozen feet in size then appeared on the light barrier, and Shi Chuankong gave the patrolling guards a slight nod before flying into the city with Han Li. There were no flight restrictions in the city, so there were many streaks of light whizzing through the air, and Shi Chuankong and Han Li mingled themselves into the crowd before flying toward the center of the city. Shortly thereafter, the two of them arrived in front of a large manor. This area was far away from the bustling streets, so it was very quiet, and there were no guards stationed at the entrance, only an elderly man in a long azure robe. "It's so good to finally see you again," the azure-robed elderly man said in an emotional voice as he approached Han Li and Shi Chuankong. "Long time no see, Elder Qi," Shi Chuankong replied with a faint smile, then made a hand seal to revert back to his original appearance. "Fellow Taoist Li, this is Elder Qi. He used to serve my mother and he's been looking after me since I was a child, so he's most definitely trustworthy. Elder Qi, this is fellow Taoist Li, the friend I was telling you about," Shi Chuankong introduced. Han Li refrained from removing his disguise, and he cupped his fist in a salute toward the elderly man as he said, "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, fellow Taoist Qi." Even though Elder Qi was doing his best to conceal his own aura, Han Li could sense that he was at the high zenith stage. However, what was even more surprising to Han Li was that even though there was devilish qi emanating from the elderly man's body, the devilish qi originated from immortal spiritual power, so the two of them were in a rather similar situation. "Thank you for protecting our young master over the course of your journey together," Elder Qi replied in a solemn manner as he returned the salute. "You're far too kind, fellow Taoist Qi," Han Li said with a smile. "There's no need for such formalities, Elder Qi. You're making fellow Taoist Li uncomfortable. Let's go in, brother Li," Shi Chuankong said, and the two of them were led into the manor by Elder Qi. "Your Highness. You're finally back, Your Highness. Did your journey go smoothly, Your Highness?" All of the servants in the manor immediately converged around Shi Chuankong to ask him questions, and Shi Chuankong replied to all of them with a warm smile, displaying none of the detached haughtiness one would expect to see in a prince. "That's enough. His Highness has only just returned, and there are still many things that he needs to do, so give him some space," Elder Qi said in a stern voice. He seemed to be a very authoritative figure here, and everyone immediately dispersed. "Sorry about that, fellow Taoist Li," Shi Chuankong said with a slightly embarrassed smile. "What is there to apologize for? It's clear that you're very welcome and admired here," Han Li replied with a smile. The three of them continued onward, and they arrived in a hall before taking a seat. "Elder Qi, thank you for looking after Grain Mountain City during all the years that I've been away. I can see that the city is in far better condition than when I left it, and it's all thanks to you," Shi Chuankong said. "You're far too kind, young master. I merely executed the plan that you had already devised prior to your departure. The number of shops in the city and the population have increased, but they're not all welcome, and there's no lack of spies among them. I've been doing my best to weed them out, but the effects have been rather lackluster. On the surface, the city appears to be thriving, but there is already some unrest beginning to brew beneath the facade. Overall, it's nowhere near as orderly as back when you were in command, young master," Elder Qi replied with a sullen expression. "If we're unable to suppress them, then let's take the opposite approach and invite them in. The entirety of the city is under my control, and if they insist on sending offerings right to my doorstep, it would be rude of me to refuse, would it not? There's no need to be concerned, Elder Qi. I'll make sure to have this taken care of," Shi Chuankong chuckled, and the sullen look on Elder Qi's face instantly faded away at the sight of Shi Chuankong's confident expression. Han Li was rather intrigued to see this. It seemed that Shi Chuankong excelled far more in business than he did in battle. "By the way, has there been any news from my third brother?" Shi Chuankong asked. "His Highness has already informed me that reinforcements are on their way, and that they'll arrive in half a month," Elder Qi replied. "Do you know who it was that my brother sent?" Shi Chuankong asked. "His Highness never specified, so I'm afraid not," Elder Qi replied with a shake of his head. Shi Chuankong was a little disappointed to hear this, but a confident look then appeared in his eyes as he said, "Regardless of who it is that my brother sent, I'm sure things will be easier for us from here onward." Han Li was also feeling slightly more reassured upon hearing this. "Seeing as it'll take some time for the reinforcements to arrive, let's stay here in the meantime and take care of some of the issues in the city. Fellow Taoist Li, you can take this opportunity to have a rest," Shi Chuankong said. Han Li nodded in response as he rose to his feet, and Elder Qi called over a young maidservant to take Han Li to his resting quarters. Han Li knew that Shi Chuankong had some things to discuss with Elder Qi, so he was going to give them some privacy. "Young master, is this fellow Taoist Li truly trustworthy?" Elder Qi asked as soon as Han Li departed. "Rest assured, Elder Qi, fellow Taoist Li is a good friend that I first encountered in the Immortal realm, and during the time that we've been together, he saved my life on multiple occasions, so he's definitely someone we can trust," Shi Chuankong replied. Elder Qi's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, but he then said, "That's good to hear, but he's a little too weak at only the early high zenith stage. I'll arrange a few more guards for you to ensure your safety." "That's even less of a concern, Elder Qi. We have many powerful cultivators under our command, but I can assure you that no one would be a match for him in battle. Fellow Taoist Li and the reinforcements sent by my brother will be enough to keep me safe. Having too many people around me could work to my detriment," Shi Chuankong replied with a smile. Elder Qi's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, but before he had a chance to protest, Shi Chuankong declared, "All right, that's enough on that. Tell me about the spies you mentioned earlier." Elder Qi could only heave a resigned sigh before delivering his report. Meanwhile, Han Li was led to a courtyard at the back of the manor. The place wasn't very large, nor was it very opulent, but it was very quaint and peaceful. "This is where you'll be staying, senior. Please call Yupo NME if you need anything. I'll be just outside the courtyard," the maidservant said. Han Li was very happy with the courtyard, and he suddenly turned to the maidservant with a mesmerizing gleam in his eyes as he asked, "What's your name?" The maidservant seemed to be transfixed as she looked into Han Li's eyes, and she replied in a slightly dazed voice, "My name is Lioner." "What kind of person is Shi Chuankong?" Han Li asked. "His Highness is someone who has no interest in fighting for power, but he's an avid businessman. He left Night Sun City at a very young age, and he's very good to his servants. He's not arrogant like the other princes, and everyone in Grain Mountain City admires him," the maidservant replied in a slightly jumbled fashion. Han Li asked her a few more questions before the light in his eyes faded, and the maidservant's expression instantly returned to normal. "All right, you can go now," Han Li instructed, and the maidservant promptly departed, none the wiser to the interrogation that she had just been put through. Han Li watched as the maidservant departed with a contemplative look on his face. The maidservant's description of Shi Chuankong fit perfectly with how Shi Chuankong normally behaved, so it seemed that he had been overly cautious. After carefully inspecting the entire courtyard with his spiritual sense, he released a string of formation flags throughout the courtyard, quickly conjuring up an azure light barrier. Only after doing all of that did he enter his bedroom, where he sat down with his legs crossed to cultivate his recompiled version of the Great Five Elemental Illusion mantra. At the same time, he also channeled his spiritual sense to continue cultivating the fifth level of the spirit refinement technique. There had been multiple close calls during the past few attacks, and he was determined to make full use of what time he had to enhance his own powers. Around half a month passed by in the blink of an eye, and on this day, Han Li's eyes suddenly sprang open as a hint of elation appeared on his face. Perhaps he was more able to tap into his own latent potential under such a dangerous and stressful environment, but this past half-month of cultivation had yielded exceptional results. In particular, following that breakthrough that he had made back in the baleful cleansing ponds, his progress in the spirit refinement technique had become incredibly smooth. After withdrawing the restrictions in the courtyard, Han Li made his way outside, and the maidservant who was waiting there hurriedly extended a curtsy as she declared, "His Highness would like to see you, Senior." "Take me to him," Han Li replied with a nod, and before long the two of them arrived in the same hall from before. Shi Chuankong and Elder Qi were both there, and there were also 3 more people in the room, 2 male and 1 female, all 3 of whom were at the high zenith stage. The one at the center of the trio was a dark-skinned elderly man clad in a suit of azure devilish armor, while to his left was an extremely tall and rotund middle-aged man who resembled a mountain of meat. As for the woman, she appeared to be around 30 years of age, and she would have been quite good-looking had it not been for her huge red dress and the excessively ostentatious red flower on her head, both of which gave her a rather comical appearance. "Please take a seat, fellow Taoist Li," Shi Chuankong said with a smile as he rose to his feet. Han Li gave a slight nod as he sat down onto a chair, and Shi Chuankong introduced, "These 3 are fellow Taoist Mo, fellow Taoist Lu, and fellow Taoist Hua. All 3 of them are guest elders of this city and also trusted subordinates of mine. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. My name is Li Feiyu," Han Li said as he cupped his fist in a salute, and the trio returned the salute in a polite fashion. Han Li then cast his gaze toward Shi Chuankong, wanting to ask him about the reinforcements sent by Shi Pakong, but he didn't know if it was appropriate with these 3 guest elders present. Shi Chuankong could tell what Han Li was thinking, and he assured, "There's no need to be apprehensive of anyone in this room, fellow Taoist Li. My brother has always been very punctual, and if he says that the reinforcements will arrive in half a month, then they'll definitely be here on time, so they should be here today." Han Li nodded in response upon hearing this. "I've invited all of you here today as I want everyone to get to know each other. I'll be relying on all of you from here onward, so let's have a chat over some wine while we wait for reinforcements to arrive. Shi Chuankong said with a smile as he pulled out a red wine jar. Even with the seal still intact, a delectable aroma was already seeping out of the jar. "It's our honor to be able to serve you, Your Highness," the dark-skinned elderly man said with a faint smile. "Indeed, you've always been very kind to us, so it's only right that we return the favor. If you need us to do anything for you, I, for one, am more than happy to make myself useful," the rotund middle-aged man declared as he patted his own chest. "It's almost a little hurtful that you're being so formal to us," the woman in the red dress chuckled. "Thank you, fellow Taoists." Shi Chuankong's mood was lifted significantly by everyone's assurances, and he flipped a hand over to produce a few cups, then personally filled them for everyone. "Fellow Daoist Li, I know you're quite an expert when it comes to wine, but I'm sure this wine of mine won't disappoint you," Shi Chuankong said to Han Li. Han Li lifted his cup before taking a sip, and his eyes immediately lit up. The flavor of this wine was very unique, and it was very different from all of the other immortal wines that he had tasted in the past. What was even more remarkable was that the wine contained a burst of extremely pure devilish qi that was beneficial for nourishing his infernal devilish eyes. "This is indeed an exceptional wine. What's it called?" Han Li asked. "I knew you'd be interested in it. This wine is called Rainbow Mulberry Wine. Here's the recipe," Shi Chuankong said as he pulled out a jade slip before handing it to Han Li. Han Li accepted the jade slip with gratitude, then injected his spiritual sense into it, upon which he discovered that there were around 20 to 30 ingredients required to brew the wine. At the moment, he still wasn't very familiar with the ingredients of the devil realm, but his intuition told him that the devilish qi in the wine originated from an ingredient by the name of red mulberry fruit. "Where can I find this red mulberry fruit?" Han Li asked. "Red mulberry fruit is produced in the northernmost region of our holy realm. Do you intend to brew this rainbow mulberry wine, fellow Taoist Li?" Shi Chuankong asked. "I'm thinking about it. Would it be possible for you to use the power of the vast origin house to gather the ingredients required to brew this wine for me? I'll be sure to compensate you for the ingredients," Han Li replied. "That's not a problem, but red mulberry fruit is a very rare ingredient, so it may take some time to acquire," Shi Chuankong said. This was no urgent matter for Han Li anyway, and he replied, "In that case, I'll be counting on you, fellow Taoist Shi. You're a wine enthusiast as well, are you, fellow Taoist Li? In that case, you and I will get along just fine. I don't have any hobbies, but I've always loved fine wine and food. Here's to you, fellow Taoist Li," the rotund middle-aged man said in a boisterous voice as he pressed a hand down onto Han Li's shoulder. Han Li raised his cup with a faint smile, making no attempt to evade the man's hand. Even though they had only just met, he could tell that the man was very straightforward and wasn't very scheming. If the dark-skinned elderly man had reached out to him, then he definitely wouldn't have let him touch any part of his body. Only now did Shi Chuankong begin to truly relax, and he began to initiate conversations, so everyone could become more familiar with one another. As the wine began to flow, the atmosphere quickly began to liven up, and before long, everyone began discussing their cultivation insights and experiences. Everyone present was at the high zenith stage, with the exception of Shi Chuankong, but he had also overcome his baleful tribulation, so he had one foot in the door. The time quickly passed by, and close to an entire day flew by in the blink of an eye, but the reinforcements sent by Shi Pakong still hadn't showed up. Han Li took a quick glance at Shi Chuankong to discover that he was also looking slightly concerned, but he maintained a calm expression as he drank and chatted with the dark-skinned elderly man. Han Li subtly withdrew his gaze, then resumed his discussion with the rotund middle-aged man. The cultivation arts used by the rotund man were more geared toward body refinement, so they were rather similar to the Provenance true devil arts, and as a result, the two of them had much common ground to discuss. Time continued to pass, and before long it had already turned dark outside, but the reinforcements sent by Shipakang still hadn't shown up, and at this point, no one was in the mood to be chatting anymore. My brother's subordinates are extremely well disciplined, so there's no way they would be intentionally tardy. Looks like something must have happened, Shi Chuankong said with furrowed brows. Han Li turned his gaze to Shi Chuankong in silence. Could it be that something went wrong on their way here, young master? Elder Qi asked with furrowed brows. Elder Qi, report this matter to my brother and ask him if he knows what's going on, Shi Chuankong instructed. The last time I attempted to contact His Highness, he seemed to have been busy with something, so he won't be able to get back to me until later, Elder Qi replied in a hesitant voice. A hint of surprise appeared on Shi Chuankong's face upon hearing this, and he said, "Is that right? In any case, you should still go and ask him." "Yes, young master," Elder Qi replied before quickly departing. Following Elder Qi's departure, Shi Chuankong leaned back against his chair and fell into deep thought with his brows tightly furrowed, and everyone fell silent. Time began to slowly pass once again, and around 15 minutes later, Elder Qi returned. "How did it go?" Shi Chuankong immediately asked. "There's still been no response," Elder Qi replied with a shake of his head. Shi Chuankong's expression darkened a little further upon hearing this, and everyone in the room was looking at him, clearly waiting for him to make a decision. "We'll wait for another half-day. If the reinforcements still haven't arrived, then we won't wait any longer," Shi Chuankong declared as he took a glance at Elder Qi, and the latter immediately departed once again. Han Li took a glance at Elder Qi's parting figure, then lowered his gaze, and the room fell back into a tense silence. As a result, time began to pass agonizingly slowly. The three high zenith cultivators were also beginning to grow a little uneasy, and they would exchange glances with each other from time to time, while Shi Chuankong and Han Li's expressions remained unchanged. Half a day quickly passed by, yet there was still no further news. Right at this moment, Shi Chuankong sprang to his feet, and Han Li and the others stood up as well. "Please come with me, everyone," Shi Chuankong instructed before making his way out of the room, and everyone immediately followed along. The group quickly arrived in a hall deep within the manor. The hall was cylindrical in shape, looking much like a round altar, and it was entirely black without any connective seams visible, as if it had been entirely carved out of a giant piece of black crystal. The hall was around an acre in area and over 100 feet tall, towering over all of the surrounding buildings. At this moment, Elder Qi was standing at the closed entrance of the hall, and he immediately approached Shi Chuankong upon catching sight of him. "Are the preparations complete?" Shi Chuankong asked. "Rest assured, young master, everything is ready to go," Elder Qi immediately replied with a nod, following which a streak of black light flew out of his hand before vanishing into the door of the hall. A layer of black light emerged over the door, following which it parted down the center to reveal the hall inside. It was a circular hall that was completely empty, making it appear particularly spacious. Embedded onto the walls at set intervals were head-sized chunks of white jade that were giving off a bright white radiance, making the interior of the hall as bright as day. On the ground at the very center of the hall was a silver teleportation formation that was around 70 to 80 feet in diameter. It was entirely filled with silver formation patterns, and there were also close to 100 black crystals embedded into it, every single one of which was giving off formidable devilish qi. At this moment, there were 8 gray-robed devilish beings seated around the formation, all of whom were at the golden immortal stage, and they immediately stood up at the sight of Kong before extending respectful bows. "Where does this teleportation lead to, fellow Daoschi?" Han Li asked. "The formation leads to Chuyu City hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. At the moment, it's safe to assume that the reinforcements sent by my brother have been held up somewhere, so continuing to wait here will only put us in an even more passive position," Kong replied, and Han Li nodded in agreement. "Activate the formation, Elder Kong instructed. Elder Chi nodded in response, then took a step forward as he summoned a silver badge. However, right as he was about to use the badge, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong, Elder Chi?" Kong asked. Han Li also turned his gaze to Elder Chi, who crouched down to pluck a black crystal out of the formation on the ground, then examined it momentarily before stowing it away. At the same time, another black crystal appeared in his other hand, and he deposited it into the vacant slot. "I just noticed that one of the devilish origin stones in the formation was a little impure, so it's best to get it replaced," Elder Chi explained with a smile, then took a step back before making a hand seal, and the silver badge instantly rose up into the air while glowing radiantly. The 8 golden immortals nearby also each summoned a silver badge, and the silver light radiating from their badges connected together with that of Elder Chi's badge. The formation on the ground instantly also began to glow and buzz, and Kong was just about to step into the teleportation formation when a burst of black light suddenly flew out of Elder Chi's hand before striking Kong on the back at an astonishing speed. A bewildered look appeared on Kong's face as the black light pierced through the layer of protective light around him with ease, following which a purple jade pendant hanging from his waist abruptly exploded to form a light barrier that kept the streak of black light at bay. Kong immediately snapped back to his senses and let loose a furious roar as he dodged to the side. A loud crack rang out as the purple light barrier was breached by the streak of black light before glancing past Kong's body, slicing a deep gash into his waist that instantly began spewing blood. Right as the streak of black light flew out of Elder Chi's hand, a giant golden claw, a thin pink sword, and a black wheel appeared around Han Li without any warning, then hurtled directly toward him, piercing into his body in unison. Immediately thereafter, the dark-skinned elderly man, the rotund middle-aged man, and the woman in the red dress surrounded him in an instant with cold, killing intent etched on their faces. However, much to their surprise, Han Li's body suddenly dissipated, revealing it to have been nothing more than an afterimage. On the other side, the gash on Kong's waist was bleeding profusely, and the skin around the wound was quickly turning black while spreading over the rest of his body. His entire body quickly became numb, and as a result, his movements were inhibited. "Die!" Elder Chi roared with a fierce look on his face as he made a grabbing motion with one hand. 3 azure vortexes instantly appeared above Kong out of thin air, and countless streaks of incredibly sharp azure light came raining down upon him. At the same time, the 8 golden immortals around the formation also pounced at him in unison, unleashing attacks of their own. "Elder Chi, how could you?" Kong's face was distorted with fury and grief as a vast expanse of purple light surged out of his body, then transformed into a purple shield that was several dozen feet in size. Layers of intricate patterns were etched onto the surface of the shield, and countless dazzling purple runes could also be seen interspersed among them. The shield had only just taken shape when the barrage of oncoming attacks arrived, and an earth-shattering boom rang out alongside an eruption of blinding light as the shield shuddered violently. Countless cracks instantly appeared on the shield's surface, following which it exploded violently, and Kong was dashed to the ground as if he had just been dealt a heavy blow. Before he had a chance to get up, He was overwhelmed by the barrage of fierce attacks, and he was completely powerless to resist. Right at this moment, he abruptly vanished from the spot amid a flash of golden light. All of the attacks directed at him struck the ground instead, and a string of resounding explosions rang out as a series of giant craters were smashed into the ground. The shockwaves from the explosions erupted outward in all directions, causing the entire hall to tremble violently as cracks appeared over its walls. But a layer of bright black light had emerged from the walls, resiliently keeping the hall intact. Right at this moment, a streak of golden light flashed through the air before piercing into one of the walls, running through the black restriction on the wall with ease, following which a large hole was blasted into the wall itself. A blurry golden shadow then flew out from within, and at the same time, the black restriction in the entire hall lit up in an erratic fashion before collapsing violently. Without the fortification provided by the restriction, the entire hall instantly collapsed as well, burying everyone within it. Several thousand feet away from the hall, Han Li appeared in midair amid a flash of golden light with Shi Chuankong clutched in one hand, and a rapidly revolving golden wheel could just barely be seen in his body. Han Li took a glance at the wreckage of the hall, then gently placed a hand onto Shi Chuankong's shoulder, and a burst of pure immortal spiritual power instantly swept through his body, suppressing the poison so that it didn't spread any further from his wound. "Thank you, fellow Taoist Li." Shi Chuankong could feel the numb sensation in his body quickly fading, and he hurriedly rose to his feet, then took a blue pill. A series of blue patterns instantly appeared over his entire body, and countless strands of muscle fibers emerged from the wound on his waist, then connected together to heal the wound, while the black coloration on the nearby skin also began to fade. "Looks like all of your subordinates have already betrayed you. What do you want to do with them?" Han Li asked. A conflicted look appeared on Shi Chuankong's face upon hearing this. Right at this moment, a string of loud explosions rang out, and the ruins of the hall erupted as Elder Qi and the others flew out into the open, before pouncing at Han Li and Shi Chuankong again. Han Li took a glance at Shi Chuankong, then made a grabbing motion with one hand, and 3 azure bamboo cloudswarm swords instantly appeared before him. With a flick of his wrist, the 3 azure bamboo cloudswarm swords transformed into countless golden lightning threads that shot forth through the air, reaching the oncoming assailants in a flash. Every single lightning thread was glowing radiantly, and they were giving off formidable lightning law power fluctuations. Elder Qi's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he let loose a thunderous roar, upon which 3 azure vortexes reappeared in front of him, releasing waves of azure ripples that formed a dense azure light barrier in front of everyone. The torrential barrage of golden lightning threads fell upon the azure light barrier, and a series of tiny vortexes appeared on its surface, attempting to devour the golden lightning threads. However, the sword threads formed by the azure bamboo cloudswarm swords were extremely formidable, and they were only stopped in their tracks for a split second before piercing through the azure light barrier with ease. The azure light barrier instantly exploded violently, but it had bought everyone enough time to react. The rotund middle-aged man clenched his hands into tight fists before ramming them against each other, and a metallic clang rang out as a series of golden ripples surged out of his body. The golden lightning threads that were caught in the ripples instantly began trembling erratically, and a small portion of them exploded on the spot, while the rest were stopped cold in their tracks. The rotund man then let loose a loud roar before making a grabbing motion with both hands, and all of the golden ripples instantly converged to form an extremely lifelike golden lion projection that let loose a deafening roar. In the face of the destructive sound waves, all of the remaining lightning threads were also shattered before disintegrating into specks of golden light. At the same time, 2 beams of black light shot out of the dark-skinned elderly man's eyes, while a vast black shadow erupted out of his body. The shadow contained a burst of glacial law powers that caused the nearby space to warp and blur, as if it had been frozen solid. The golden lightning threads were instantly stopped cold in their tracks by the black shadow, while the woman in the red dress opened her mouth to release a translucent white ring. The ring swelled dramatically to over 100 feet in size at her behest, encompassing her entire body within it, and it revolved around her briefly before exploding on its own to form a white cloud that was hundreds of feet in size. The oncoming golden lightning threads were able to pierce into the white cloud with ease, but they were instantly slowed down as a result, as if they had pierced into a viscous swamp. The woman took advantage of this window of respite to dodge to the side, allowing her to evade all of the golden lightning threads. Meanwhile, Elder Chi flew back in retreat before appearing among the 8 golden immortals in a flash. The 8 of them immediately formed an orderly circle around Elder Chi, and lights of different colors rose up from all 9 of their bodies, then intertwined with one another before dancing through the air like a storm of flowers. Elder Chi rubbed his hands together, and a torrential barrage of incantation seals instantly shrugged forth. All of the flowers of light of different colors instantly fused into one, then formed a gray formation that encompassed the 9 of them. The golden lightning threads struck the gray formation before exploding into arcs of lighting, and the formation instantly began trembling incessantly, but it showed no signs of breaking. Even though everyone had managed to ward off the golden lightning threads, Han Li remained completely unfazed, and he turned to Shi Chuankong again as he urged, "You can't afford to be indecisive here, fellow Taoist Shi." Shi Chuankong shuddered, and the indecision in his eyes faded as he replied, "My apologies, fellow Taoist Li. If they're determined to kill us, then there's no need for you to hold back." Han Li nodded in response, then swept a sleeve through the air, releasing 9 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, and all of the golden lightning threads up ahead also flew back before reverting back into 3 golden flying swords. The 12 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were all glowing radiantly as Han Li made a rapid string of hand seals, and streaks of golden sword chi descended out of the sky to form a massive sword formation that was several acres in area. It was none other than his horned dragon sword formation, and as it descended from the heavens, it seemed to be bringing the nearby space along with it. The dark-skinned elderly man and the woman in the red dress immediately darted away in opposite directions, just barely getting out of the way before the golden sword formation fully descended. The 2 of them had managed to escape, but the rotund man and Elder Chi and the 8 golden immortals weren't so fortunate, and all of them were caught within the formation. A grim look appeared on the rotund man's face as he opened his mouth to release a burst of golden light that vanished into the golden lion projection in a flash, and the projection instantly swelled to several times its original size to encompass him within it. Immediately thereafter, countless golden runes emerged over the golden lion projection's body, and it instantly took on a much more substantial form. At the same time, a series of golden spots had also appeared over its skin, resembling a suit of scale armor, giving it a very fearsome appearance. The golden lion let loose a ferocious roar as it began to bound forward, trying to escape from the sword formation. At the same time, the gray formation that Elder Chi was situated in began to glow brightly, while releasing a series of threads of gray light that swept toward the surrounding sword formation, attempting to break it open from the inside. A cold sneer appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, and countless streaks of formidable golden sword chi erupted out of the sword formation at his behest, alongside 12 golden sword projections that resembled giant dragons, all of which struck the golden lion and the gray formation. The golden lion instantly crumpled, falling away into several pieces as if it were made from tofu. As a result, the rotund man was revealed with an alarmed look on his face, and before he had a chance to do anything, two sword projections swept right through his body, slicing him into pieces. At the same time, all of the threads of gray light released by the gray formation also instantly shattered upon making contact with the opposing sword chi. Several sword projections then struck the gray formation, and it was barely able to put up any resistance before it was also destroyed. A torrential barrage of sword chi instantly inundated Elder Chi and the 8 golden immortals, and a chorus of agonized howls rang out. "Gao Feng, you bastard! Stop!" The woman in the red dress screeched in a furious voice as she pounced at Han Li like lightning while flipping a hand over to summon a pink jade fan. The fan was entirely pink in color, with countless vibrant butterfly designs emblazoned upon it, and it was giving off a layer of pink flames. Han Li and Shi Chuankong both faltered slightly upon hearing her enraged cry, but before they had a chance to do anything, the woman swept the fan vigorously through the air, releasing a burst of dense pink light that surged toward Han Li in a frenzy. At the same time, the dark-skinned elderly man also transformed into a black shadow that pounced at Han Li, and as he did this, black shadows began to surge out of his body, forming a black cloud that was several hundred feet in size. A low roar rang out from within the cloud, following which a giant black turtle the size of a house emerged. The creature had 6 eyes and a series of giant ice spikes on its back, and its entire body was giving off a fearsome glacial aura. As soon as the giant black turtle appeared, all 6 of its eyes instantly sprang open at once to release 6 pillars of black light, which covered a distance of several thousand feet in the blink of an eye to strike at Han Li. In response, Han Li immediately made a hand seal, and arcs of thick golden lightning erupted out of his hands, forming 2 dense walls of golden lightning that stood in the path of the pink light and the pillars of black light. 2 dull thumps rang out as the walls of lightning shuddered violently, then instantly settled down once again, keeping the oncoming attacks at bay. Even though the pink light and the pillars of black light had been stopped in their tracks, the law powers imbued within them were able to pass through the walls of lightning and into Han Li's body. There was a burst of glacial law powers that had some effect on his body, but was kept out before it was able to infiltrate very deep. However, the other burst of law powers was as soft as cloud and mist, and it quickly began to burrow into his body upon contact. Han Li caught a whiff of a peculiar aroma, and his bones shuddered while all of his pores opened up at once, and he was suddenly overcome by such an intense wave of feebleness that he almost fell to the ground. He immediately realized that this burst of soft law powers was interspersed with some type of fragrant substance, and both had infiltrated his entire body. The 2 of them had been combined together to perfection, and he was unable to tell them apart. Han Li was slightly alarmed by this turn of events, but he didn't panic. His mantra-treasured axis appeared behind him amid a flash of golden light, and it released waves of golden ripples that washed over his body, eradicating the 2 bursts of external law powers that had infiltrated his body. However, to his dismay, the fragrant substance remained in his body, completely unaffected by his time law powers, and he was still feeling extremely feeble. "Well done, fellow Taoist Hua. This is where you die, Gao Feng." The dark-skinned elderly man yelled as he pointed a finger at Han Li, and 5 more giant black turtles emerged from the shadows around him before opening their eyes in unison. Pillars of black light erupted out of the 6 turtles' collective 36 eyes, and they condensed into a series of thin black threads that hurtled directly toward Han Li. These thin black threads were giving off a glacial aura that was almost on par with that of Han Li's azure bamboo cloudswarm swords, and at the same time, All of the ice spikes on the backs of the giant black turtles detached themselves before hurtling directly toward Han Li. In the face of the oncoming attacks, Han Li remained completely unfazed as he made a hand seal before opening his mouth to release a silver fireball that was around 10 feet in diameter. The silver fireball instantly expanded into a sea of silver flames that was around an acre in size, with Han Li at the very center. Waves of fire that were dozens of feet tall rose up into the air, giving off a sweltering aura. The Essence Fire Raven was dancing within the sea of flames, and as soon as the black threads and ice spikes pierced into the silver flames, they were instantly melted away into nothingness. All of the pink sword projections in the air also vanished before reverting back into a pink flying sword, and the spiritual light emanating from it was rapidly fading in the face of the scorching flames. The woman's expression changed drastically as she raised a hand to try and summon her flying sword back to herself. But right at this moment, the Essence Fire Raven swooped down onto the sword, catching it in its beak before tipping its head back to swallow the sword as if it were a little bug. The woman's spiritual connection with the flying sword instantly vanished, and she gave a muffled groan as her complexion paled significantly. A look of alarm and concern appeared on the dark-skinned elderly man's face upon seeing this, but before he had a chance to do anything, the Essence Fire Raven suddenly launched itself at him with astonishing speed. Even before the Fire Raven had fully descended upon him, the heat radiating from its body was already enough to make the nearby space tremble incessantly, as if it were about to be set alight. All of the black shadows around the elderly man were rapidly evaporating, and he hurriedly flew back in retreat, while a burst of black light erupted out of his body, quickly forming a black spirit domain that was around 100 feet in size. A burst of glacial law powers was churning incessantly within the black spirit domain, freezing everything within it. At the same time, 7 or 8 treasures flew out of his body in rapid succession, forming a series of protective barriers around him. A very humanized look of derision flashed through the Essence Fire Raven's eyes upon seeing this, and it abruptly swelled to around twice its original size, while roughly a dozen large specks of silver light appeared on its wings. Bursts of silver flames erupted backward out of those specks of light, and the Essence Fire Raven instantly sped up dramatically, flying headfirst into the black spirit domain as a long streak of silver light. The black spirit domain had no effect on the Essence Fire Raven at all, and it instantly tore through the spirit domain before crashing into the protective barriers in front of the elderly man. The protective barriers weren't able to pose any resistance, either, and the Essence Fire Raven was barely slowed down at all as it tore through all of them in rapid succession, before piercing straight through the dark-skinned elderly man's body. The elderly man was instantly split into two at the waist, following which the two halves of his body erupted into scorching silver flames. A fearful look finally appeared on the woman's face upon seeing this, and she gritted her teeth before fleeing into the distance as a streak of pink light. However, she had only managed to fly for about 1,000 feet before several translucent chains shot out of the nearby space without any warning, then wound themselves around her body like lightning. At the same time, Han Li appeared directly before her, clearly having already recovered from the poison that he had inhaled. The pink light emanating from the woman's body instantly brightened significantly before erupting outward to form a pink spirit domain, and around a dozen different fragrances appeared within the spirit domain, mixing with the law powers inside before converging toward Han Li. In response, the golden light radiating from Han Li's body brightened significantly at his behest, releasing bursts of time law powers that kept all of the external law powers within the spirit domain at bay. At the same time, he flicked a finger through the air, and several arcs of golden lightning shot out of his fingertip before striking the woman in several of her vital regions, including her glabella and her dantian. A loud thunderclap rang out, and the woman's entire body was charred black, following which she convulsed violently for a moment before falling unconscious. Immediately thereafter, the pink spirit domain vanished, and the fragrances in the air began to dissipate. Han Li then swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a burst of green light that emitted tremendous suction force, sucking all of the fragrances up his sleeve. Right at this moment, a dull thump suddenly rang out from the sword formation in the distance, and a miniature azure figure flew out from within. It was Elder Chi's nascent soul, and it had somehow managed to escape from the horned dragon sword formation. As soon as the azure nascent soul emerged, it immediately fled into the distance as a streak of azure light, but right at this moment, Shi Chuankong appeared directly in front of it, then reached out with one hand, conjuring a huge purple hand projection that caught the nascent soul in a flash. The nascent soul immediately began struggling with all its might, but strands of purple light were surging out of the hand projection, forming a dense net that prevented the nascent soul from getting away. Elder Chi, I've always seen you as family, and I've never wronged you in any way. Why have you betrayed me? Shi Chuankong asked in a furious voice with his fists tightly clenched. However, the nascent soul didn't appear to have heard him at all, and it yelled in a defiant voice, I won't tell you anything about young Master Shi. Immediately, a look of resolve appeared on its face, as blinding azure light began to radiate from its body. Stop him, fellow Taoist Shi, he's about to self-detonate, Han Li yelled in alarm. Shi Chuankong hurriedly sprang into action upon hearing this, and threads of purple light began to burrow their way into the azure nascent soul, but it was already too late. In the next instant, the nascent soul exploded violently into a radiant azure sun. Shi Chuankong hurriedly flew back in retreat, but he was too close to the azure sun, yet right as he was about to get swept up in the explosion, an arc of golden lightning fell out of the sky, forming a protective barrier in front of him, and two crossed golden flying swords could just barely be made out within the barrier. The explosion of azure light raged ferociously against the lightning barrier, causing it to tremble incessantly, but it displayed no signs of breaking. A few moments later, the azure sun rapidly dimmed before vanishing altogether. Han Li appeared beside him in a flash, then made a hand seal, and the golden lightning barrier reverted back into a pair of azure bamboo cloud swarm swords before flying back up his sleeve. What happened just now, fellow Taoist Li? Who is this Gao Feng that they were speaking of? Shi Chuankong asked as he turned to Han Li. Han Li offered no response. Instead, he closed his eyes and he seemed to be sensing something. Right at this moment, a loud explosion rang out several thousand feet away, and a yellow figure stumbled out of thin air with another Han Li hot on their tail. The other Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, releasing 6 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords that hurtled directly toward the yellow figure, but the latter remained completely unfazed, releasing a streak of translucent light that contained a yellow copper mirror. An earth-shattering boom rang out, and the 6 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were sent flying back, but the streak of translucent light also exploded. Meanwhile, the yellow figure vanished from the spot, then reappeared thousands of feet away to reveal male figure in a yellow robe, but his facial features were concealed behind a layer of yellow light. If I'm not mistaken, this man orchestrated everything that happened just now. I don't know how he did it, but he appeared to have somehow manipulated Elder Chi and the others into mistaking us for 2 other people, thereby turning them against us, Han Li said. Shi Chuankong's expression instantly darkened significantly upon hearing this. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, and the Han Li beside Shi Chuankong dissipated into specks of azure light, revealing it to have been nothing more than Avatar. The horned dragon sword formation also reverted back to 12 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords that flew up his sleeve, and the bodies of the rotund man and the 8 golden immortals fell to the ground. My apologies. The situation just now was very urgent, so even though I already noticed that something was amiss, I had no choice but to retaliate, Hanley said in an apologetic manner, then raised his hand to make a beckoning motion, and a ball of silver fire flew over to him, following which the body of the dark-skinned elderly man fell out of it. The 2 halves of his body had already been reassembled, but his aura was extremely feeble. It seemed that some type of restriction had been planted in his body, and this moment, he was laying on the ground in a completely immobilized manner, glowering up at Han Li, and Shi Chuankong with burning resentment in his eyes. As for the ball of silver flames, it reverted back into the essence fire raven before vanishing into Han Li's body in a flash. Shi Chuankong didn't seem to have heard Han Li at all, and he took a glance down at the dark-skinned elderly man with mixed emotions in his eyes, then cast a cold gaze toward the yellow-robed man. "It's very impressive that you were able to find me on such scant leads," the yellow-robed man remarked as he sized up Han Li. The yellow light concealing his face quickly faded away as he spoke, revealing him to be a young man who appeared to be around 25 to 26 years of age. He was wearing half a silver mask that concealed the left half of his face, and the exposed skin on the right side of his face was very fair and smooth. Upon closer inspection, Hanley discovered that the man was wearing makeup, and his lips were bright red, giving him a very strange, gender-ambiguous appearance. "Hua Jang," Shi Chuankong yelled in a furious voice, and he seemed to be familiar with the man. All of a sudden, his entire body began to tremble, and an agonized look appeared on his face as his aura began to fluctuate violently. Hanley's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately flew over to Shi Chuankong's side, then released a burst of azure light into his body. His aura instantly began to settle, while the pain on his face also began to ease. "I understand you must feel terrible right now, but you can't afford to let your emotions get the better of you. This man is quite powerful, and his law powers are also very peculiar. You seem to be familiar with him. Do you know what we should expect from him in battle?" Hanley asked through voice transmission. The masked man was a late high zenith cultivator, and he was clearly far more formidable than Elder Chi and the others. During their brief clash, he had used 6 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords at once, yet even that wasn't enough to gain him an upper hand. Shi Chuankong took a deep breath to regain some composure, then replied through voice transmission. "His name is Hua Jang, and he's one of the subordinates of my 5th sister, Shi Jingyan. He's mastered some type of law powers related to hypnotism, and he's able to control one's senses. Elder Chi and the others must have fallen prey to him." Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. Back in the 10 Hazards mountain range and preeminent city, it was Shi Jianfeng, and now it was Shi Jingyan. It seemed like barely any of Shi Chuankong's siblings wanted him to live. "Jingyan sent you, didn't she? What does she want?" Shi Chuankong asked as he stepped forward with a cold expression. "Why ask the question when you already know the answer, Your Highness? Her Highness instructed me to fetch your head along with the Virata loot. Having said that, I don't have absolute confidence in my ability to defeat this subordinate of yours, so how about we make a compromise, and I'll let you live, but you have to hand over the Virata loot," Hua Jang proposed with a faint smile. Han Li remained silent upon hearing this, while Shi Chuankong spat through gritted teeth. "Is that supposed to be a joke? You turned so many of my subordinates against me, and you killed Elder Chi. You're not leaving this place alive. Why are you getting so worked up over the deaths of an old servant and a few dogs? It's unbecoming of a prince like yourself to have such little composure," Hua Jang chuckled. Shi Chuankong wasted no more time with words as he pounced forward, and his Varada lute appeared in his grasp amid a flash of silver light. As he strummed his fingers over the lute's strings, countless silver runes surged forth, then transformed into hundreds of silver blades of wind that hurtled directly toward Hua Jang. Not only were these blades of wind extremely fast, there was an insubstantial, wraith-like quality to them, making them very difficult to evade. Hua Jang's eyes lit up slightly at the sight of the Varada lute, but instead of rushing in recklessly, he darted back in retreat. Right at this moment, 3 golden flying swords appeared behind him without any warning, then transformed into countless golden sword projections to cut off his retreat. Hua Jang was completely unfazed as he swept a sleeve through the air, and an intricate little yellow bell appeared above his head amid a flash of yellow light. The bell chimed as it released a burst of yellow light, which formed a giant yellow bell projection that encompassed Hua Jang's entire body. In the next instant, all of the golden sword projections and blades of silver wind struck the giant bell projection, causing it to tremble incessantly, but it was able to remain intact and keep all of the attacks at bay. Shi Chuankong's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this, and in the next instant, all of the silver blades of wind began to circle around the giant bell projection like a flock of birds. Immediately thereafter, Shi Chuankong strummed his fingers over the strings of the lute once again, and all of the hundreds of blades of wind instantly converged to form a pair of silver crescent moons, each of which was several dozen feet in size. A burst of rumbling rang out from the pair of crescent moons, and they began to sweep toward the giant yellow bell. Hua Jang's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately swept both sleeves through the air, upon which the yellow bell projection around him became around twice as thick as before. At the same time, countless yellow runes appeared over its surface, giving off a burst of tremendous earth law powers. In the next instant, the 2 crescent moons struck the giant bell projection, and they were able to phase straight through the projection, completely ignoring it and the earth law powers that it was releasing. Hua Jang's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, and he hurriedly flew back in retreat as a yellow shadow. However, right at this moment, Han Li appeared behind him without any warning, then threw an almighty punch into the giant bell projection. A resounding clang rang out, and even though the bell projection wasn't shattered, it was stopped cold in its tracks, thereby allowing the 2 silver crescent moon projections to catch up to it. The 2 crescent moons struck Hua Jang in the blink of an eye, releasing bursts of sharp spatial law powers that instantly reduced his body to a pile of mincemeat. Shi Chuankong's expression eased slightly upon seeing this, and he sighed, "Rest in peace, Elder Qi. I've avenged you." "Hold on, something's not right," Han Li suddenly yelled in a grim voice, and Shi Chuankong looked up just in time to see Hua Jang's mangled remains vanish into thin air, revealing it to have been nothing more than an illusion. Han Li activated his infernal devilish eyes while also releasing his tremendous spiritual sense to scour the surrounding area, and at the same time, Hua Jang reappeared several thousand feet away with a mocking sneer on his face. "You thought that was enough to kill me, Your Highness. How hurtful that you think so little of me. If that was enough to kill me, then I would have already been dead and buried long ago." A yellow copper mirror emerged above his head amid a flash of yellow light, and the mirror was around a foot in size, giving off rays of translucent light. There were some squiggly lines engraved onto its frame, and at the center of the mirror was an extremely vibrant red flower. Han Li's gaze was immediately drawn to the flower, which began to turn toward him, as if it had sprung to life. Han Li instantly snapped back to his senses upon seeing this, and his tremendous spiritual sense began to sweep through his mind, where a series of red projections had appeared, wrapping themselves around his soul before attempting to burrow their way in. However, Han Li was instantly able to eradicate these projections with his spiritual sense, thereby restoring his mental clarity, and he heaved a faint sigh of relief before turning his gaze back to Hua Jang with a wary expression. A hint of surprise flashed through Hua Jang's eyes upon seeing this. Impressive. I didn't think your spiritual sense would be so powerful. Having said that, right at this moment, two white shadows suddenly shot forth toward him like lightning from either side, and he immediately took evasive measures, darting away as a streak of golden light to just barely evade the oncoming attacks. He then reappeared several thousand feet away, while Shi Chuankong appeared in the same spot where he had just been standing a moment ago. At this moment, there was a look of murderous rage in Shi Chuankong's eyes, and he pounced at Han Li once again while strumming his Verata lute, sending countless silver blades of wind sweeping toward Han Li. At the same time, the two streaks of white light circled around in midair before also hurtling toward Han Li once again, and they were a pair of white jade rulers. Shi Chuankong opened his mouth to release two balls of blood essence, which vanished into the pair of rulers in a flash, and countless white runes instantly surged out of the jade rulers, following which they transformed into a pair of massive balls of white light that rumbled toward Han Li with tremendous power. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he vanished from the spot amid a flash of golden lightning, then reappeared not far behind Shi Chuankong before urging in a thunderous voice, "Wake up, fellow Taoist Shi." He was unleashing a lion's roar technique that was capable of shaking the soul and dispelling illusions, but it had no effect on Shi Chuankong, who swung around before taking a swipe at Han Li. 5 bursts of purple devilish chi shot out of his fingertips, each forming a fiery purple devilish claw that grabbed directly at Han Li's chest. Han Li made a hand seal upon seeing this, and several thick arcs of lightning sprang out of his flying swords before striking Shi Chuankong in his vital regions, including his glabella and his dantian. Shi Chuankong shuddered violently, and his entire body was instantly charred black, but he didn't seem to be able to feel the pain at all as he shrugged off the golden lightning and continued charging forward. At the same time, several streaks of black light descended out of the sky like bolts of black lightning before striking Han Li, while a sweet aroma wafted through the air from another direction, and a dragon formed by pink mist appeared without any warning before pouncing Han Li. An alarmed look appeared on Han Li's face as he shot back in retreat with golden lightning flashing over his body, while the dark-skinned elderly man and the woman in the red dress emerged from behind the black light and the mist dragon, respectively. Both of them had ashy complexions and violently fluctuating auras, and they were in no condition to battle, but they were still charging at him without any recourse. Anyone who's fallen prey to my flower mirror ability will continue to fight to the death regardless of how severe their injuries are, unless I free them from the ability, Hua Jang chuckled. Han Li's expression darkened even further upon hearing this, and he swept a sleeve through the air to summon 18 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords in a row. The 18 flying swords then flew toward Shi Chuankong's trio at his behest, releasing thick arcs of golden lightning that formed a wave of lightning that stretched for close to 10 kilometers, while giving off formidable lightning law power fluctuations. Han Li flew into the wave of lightning, and it instantly began to glow even brighter while sweeping through the air, reaching Shi Chuankong's trio in the blink of an eye. The three of them immediately lashed out without any hesitation, with Shi Chuankong strumming his fingers over the Verata lute to release bursts of violent sound waves interspersed with countless silver runes. The silver runes split up into two before fusing into the blades of silver wind and the two balls of white light, and the blades of silver wind instantly converged to form a silver crescent moon that was twice the size of the ones directed at Hua Jang earlier. As for the two balls of white light, they fused together to form a radiant white sun, and the silver moon and white sun sped toward the wave of golden lightning, leaving a flurry of spatial rifts in their wake. Meanwhile, the dark-skinned elderly man opened his mouth to release a blacking stone, which instantly began to revolve rapidly at his behest, releasing a vast expanse of black mist that formed a huge black cloud in the blink of an eye. The cloud was filled with immense glacial chi, and countless black ice crystals began to take shape, while the cloud of black mist itself transformed into a torrent of black water. The previously insubstantial black cloud instantly transformed into a turbulent glacial river that rumbled through the air. At the same time, the woman flipped a hand over to summon a white scroll, which was unfurled to release a flurry of white runes that converged to form 8 extremely lifelike crystalline white dragons. The pink light emanating from the woman's body brightened significantly before surging into the white scroll, which instantly turned pink as well, as did the 8 white dragon projections. The crystalline dragons looked as if they had been carved out of pink ice, and they were giving off tremendous auras near the high zenith stage. The woman's complexion had become deathly pale at this point, but she was still expending her devilish power without any reservation. The attacks from all 4 combatants clashed amid a string of earth-shattering booms, and golden, silver, black, and pink light intertwined violently, resulting in a temporary impasse. However, it was very apparent that the golden lightning had the upper hand, but Han Li didn't dare to go all out for fear of killing his 3 already injured opponents. Hua Jang burst into deranged laughter upon seeing this, and he began licking his fingers with an intoxicated expression. He loved turning previously close friends against each other, and it was even better in scenarios where one person managed to remain conscious, and he was forced to fight against his friends, but didn't dare to go all out for fear of hurting them. Han Li could hear Hua Jang's deranged laughter, and he harumphed coldly as he made a string of hand seals. 18 thick streaks of sword light instantly shot out of the wave of lightning at his behest, and at this point, it was already taking every last ounce of power just for Shi Chuankong's trio to keep the wave of golden lightning at bay, so they didn't have the spare capacity to defend themselves from any other attacks. As a result, the golden flying swords were able to tear through the protective light barriers around them with ease, following which they were struck by the surrounding arcs of golden lightning. All 3 of them were instantly sent flying with blood gushing out of their mouths, and thanks to the properties that it had inherited from the bone-rinsing golden lightning, the lightning in the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords had a numbing effect that could deprive one of their control over their body and immortal spiritual power. However, a burst of bright red light flashed in their minds in unison, and they were forced to overexert themselves without considering the costs incurred, forcibly fighting their way through the numbing effect. Right at this moment, Han Li appeared in front of the 3 of them without any warning, then tapped a finger against their foreheads in rapid succession. With each tap, several translucent chains flew out of his fingertip before vanishing into their glabellas in a flash. Immediately thereafter, all 3 of them crumpled to the ground with dazed looks on their faces. It had clearly taken a great deal of effort for Han Li to subdue the trio, as evidenced by his slightly pale complexion, and he took a deep breath to steady himself before sweeping a sleeve through the air, upon which the vast wave of golden lightning in the sky reverted back into 18 golden flying swords that flew back up his sleeve. Hua Jang's smile immediately stiffened upon seeing this, and he began making a string of hand seals, but Shi Chuankong's trio displayed no reaction. "What did you do to them? How did you manage to seal their souls away?" he asked with a furious expression. "You think I would tell you?" Han Li scoffed in a cold voice. "You're not going to tell me? Fine. In that case, I'll just have to pluck your soul out of your body and see for myself. After such an intense battle, I'm sure you're already close to a spent force," Hua Jang sneered. Are you trying to tell me that you can use that flower mirror ability of yours with minimal exertion? Surely you haven't been passively observing this entire time just to show off, Han Li countered. Hua Jang's eyes instantly narrowed slightly upon seeing this. You've made me your plaything this entire time. It's about time that you get what's been coming to you now, Han Li declared in a cold voice as he strode toward Hua Jang with cold, killing intent in his eyes. For some reason, a chill ran down Hua Jang's spine, and in order to disguise his fear, he yelled, "You sure talk big for a mere early high Zenth cultivator." Immediately thereafter, a burst of bright yellow light surged out of his body, then took on the form of a strange, beastly head that was over 1,000 feet in size and seemed to be somewhere between a dragon and a tiger. The beastly head opened its cavernous mouth to release a burst of yellow light, which crossed over a distance of tens of thousands of feet in the blink of an eye before descending upon Han Li. In response, Han Li raised a hand before making a grabbing motion, and thick arcs of golden lightning appeared before him once again to form a thick lightning barrier that stood in the path of the yellow light. The two clashed, and while one would have expected an earth-shattering boom, there was only a faint thud in reality. The thick lightning barrier flashed erratically before it was torn apart by the burst of yellow light, without being able to pose any resistance. And the burst of yellow light was barely slowed down at all as it pierced straight through Han Li's chest. However, in the next instant, Han Li vanished into thin air, revealing himself to be nothing more than an afterimage. Hua Jang's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this, but in the next instant, an alarmed look suddenly appeared on his face as his body split up into 4 or 5 yellow shadows that sprang away in all directions. Before the yellow shadows were able to get very far, countless streaks of golden sword chi erupted out of the very spot where Hua Jang had been standing just a moment ago, and all of the yellow shadows were caught in the barrage. A roar of pain and fury rang out from within the flurry of sword chi, and a streak of yellow light flew out before retreating to tens of thousands of feet away, where it was revealed to be Hua Jang. At this moment, his robes were in tatters, and his arms and legs were bleeding profusely, but a suit of black inner armor had appeared beneath his robes, protecting his vital regions. However, the mask that he was wearing had been torn away, revealing the other half of his face, which was gray and wizened, resembling the bark of an old tree. Hua Jang's face instantly became twisted with fury as he roared, "My mask! How dare you! I'm going to kill you!" The golden light emanating from his body brightened significantly, as around a dozen of HT's same yellow beastly head projections appeared around him, and each of them opened their mouths to release a burst of yellow light that struck the oncoming golden sword chi. The bursts of yellow light were extremely formidable, and just like how the first one was able to tear through the golden lightning barrier with ease, these bursts of yellow light were able to vanquish the streaks of golden sword chi just as easily. Han Li flew out of the mass of crumbling golden sword chi, and as soon as he emerged, a burst of golden light instantly erupted out of his body to form a golden spirit domain that was several dozen kilometers in size. At the same time, 18 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords shot out of his body before vanishing into thin air. Hua Jang could sense the flow of time slowing down around him, and he immediately unleashed his own spirit domain, which was filled with flashing lights and countless flower petals, presenting a dizzying sight to behold. He then hurriedly made a hand seal, and a pillar of yellow light shot down from the copper mirror above his head to encompass his entire body. At the same time, a giant yellow bell that was over 100 feet tall appeared around his own body, and he had only just adopted these defensive measures when the 18 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords shot out of thin air to strike the yellow bell around him. The giant bell shuddered violently, and the yellow light radiating from it flashed erratically for a moment, but then quickly settled down again. Hua Jang was rather taken aback to see this. By his estimates, the 18 flying swords may not have been able to break through the bell projection around him, but they definitely should have been more powerful than this. Right at this moment, a giant fist that was covered in purplish golden scales emerged above the giant bell amid a burst of spatial fluctuations, then gently struck the bell. A resounding clang rang out as the giant bell was instantly smashed into pieces like porcelain, following which Han Li emerged out of thin air, having already unleashed his holy nirvana physique. Bursts of strange power were constantly infiltrating his mind from the nearby spirit domain, attempting to disrupt his senses, but he was able to retain his mental clarity thanks to his tremendous spiritual sense, and his other 5 fists slammed into the pillar of yellow light around Hua Jang in unison. An earth-shattering boom rang out as the space within a radius of several thousand feet warped significantly, and all of the yellow beastly heads around Hua Jang instantly exploded, while the pillar of yellow light was also shattered. Even though Hua Jang hadn't been directly struck by the oncoming fists, just the shockwaves alone were enough to send him flying like a leaf in a storm, and blood gushed out of his mouth as he fled into the distance with an alarmed and fearful look on his face. However, despite his best efforts, he was still only able to move very slowly in Han Li's time-spirit domain. A look of resolve flashed through his eyes as he opened his mouth to release a ball of blood essence into the copper mirror above his head, and a layer of crimson light instantly emerged over its surface before descending into his body. Immediately thereafter, his body swelled drastically in size, while his skin took on a bright red coloration. Veins began to bulge all over his body, and his speed was enhanced by roughly twofold. At the same time, dozens of identical streaks of yellow light appeared in the nearby space before fleeing in all directions. All of the streaks of light were giving off identical auras, making it impossible to tell which one was the real Hua Jang. Han Li harumphed coldly upon seeing this, and his mantra-treasured axis appeared behind him before releasing waves of golden ripples that spread through the air to encompass all of the streaks of yellow light, instantly immobilizing them. Han Li heaved a faint sigh of relief upon seeing this, but right at this moment, a tremendous aura erupted out of one of the streaks of light up ahead. The aura excelled far beyond Hua Jang's, almost reaching the great encompassment stage, and it was still steadily elevating. All of the golden ripples near that streak of yellow light began to buzz and tremble, looking as if they were on the verge of giving out. Han Li hurriedly made a hand seal upon seeing this, and the 18 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords instantly shot forth through the air before converging toward that streak of yellow light. In the blink of an eye, Hua Jang's body was reduced to a pile of mincemeat, and the tremendous aura that he was giving off instantly faded, restoring the nearby golden ripples to normal. Han Li heaved another faint sigh of relief upon seeing this, and he reverted back to his human form. After that, he swallowed a couple of pills, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a streak of azure light, which swept up Hua Jang's remains and the yellow copper mirror. At this point, the crimson light on the mirror had already faded, restoring it to its original color. Han Li picked up the mirror with an intrigued look in his eyes. This mirror was most likely Hua Jang's bonded treasure, and it was what he used to hypnotize others. Not only was the mirror capable of hypnotizing us, he had even used it to hypnotize himself at the end, allowing him to fully tap into his own latent potential to attain power that was close to the great encompassment stage. If it weren't for the recent strides that Han Li had made in his spirit refinement technique, he may not have been able to withstand Hua Jang's hypnotism. With a sweep of his sleeve, a burst of green light shot out to sweep up the mirror before sucking it into the profound heavenly gourd. After that, Han Li flicked a finger through the air to release a streak of azure light into Hua Jang's remains, and it quickly re-emerged with a yellow nascent soul. A hint of killing intent flashed through his eyes as he grabbed onto the nascent soul, and he was just about to crush it when he suddenly stopped what he was doing and turned to take a glance at Kong. After a brief hesitation, he opened his mouth to release a ball of silver flames, which quickly flew in a circle around the yellow nascent soul, forming a series of fiery silver runes that imprinted themselves to its body. Hanli then swept a sleeve through the air to release another ball of flames, which quickly incinerated Hua Jang's remains into ashes, leaving behind only a suit of black inner armor, a yellow bracelet, and carving of a yellow beastly head. Hanli raised an eyebrow as he drew the carving into his grasp. It was only around the size of a human hand, and it was extremely intricate and lifelike. This was most likely what had just unleashed those formidable bursts of yellow light. Even though the carving had a jade-like appearance, it felt more like something that had been carved out of bone. He played with it for a moment before stowing it away to be examined some other time. Hanli then also stowed the suit of black inner armor and the storage bracelet away, and only after that did he withdraw his spirit domain and mantra treasured axis. As soon as the golden ripples vanished, a horrified look immediately appeared on the face of Hua Jang's nascent soul, and a burst of yellow light emerged over its body. However, right at this moment, silver flames shot out of the silver runes emblazoned onto its body, incinerating the yellow light and leaving a scorch mark on its body. The nascent soul let loose an agonized howl while trembling violently. "I've set up a true flame restriction on your body. That was just a warning. If you try any more funny business, I'll kill you right now," Hanli warned in a cold voice. Hua Jang's nascent soul shuddered as it instantly fell still. Hanli swept a sleeve through the air to recover his 18 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, then flew over to Kong and the others. "Let's be civilized about this, fellow Taoist. There's no bad blood between us. We only just so happen to be serving different masters in conflict with each other. I'm sure you're protecting Kong in exchange for some form of compensation. Out of all of the Holy Monarch's children, Kong is the least remarkable one. I'm serving Her Highness Shi Jingyan, and she possesses a tremendous amount of connections and resources, far more so than Kong. On top of that, she's always looking out for more capable subordinates, so why don't you defect to her camp instead? I'm willing to put in a recommendation for you, and with your powers, you'll surely flourish under Her Highness. Whatever compensation Kong has given you, Her Highness can double it, no, triple it," Hua Jang implored in an urgent voice, trying to convince Hanli into defecting. Hanli completely ignored Hua Jang's offer as he ordered, "Undo your flower mirror ability. You don't seem to be from our devil race. Instead, it looks more like you're a cultivator from the true immortal realm using devilish cultivation arts, so I'm assuming you don't know much about the current state of our holy realm. Right now, there's a very important event taking place in Night Sun City, and all of the princes and princesses are locked in a battle that concerns the fate of the entire holy realm. For high zenith cultivators like ourselves, joining the wrong camp will spell instant death, so you have to think carefully." The nascent soul's voice was becoming more and more urgent as it spoke. "Undo your flower mirror ability," Hanli repeated in a cold voice. "Don't make me say it a third time. I'm sure killing you would automatically undo the ability anyway, right?" Hua Jang's nascent soul looked up at Hanli, with its mouth gaped open in panic and agitation, and it was at a loss for words. A cold sneer appeared on Hanli's face, and the silver fire runes on the nascent soul's body instantly began to light up. Black scorch marks were beginning to appear on the nascent soul's body, and it hurriedly yelled, all right, I'll undo the ability right away. Please spare me." Immediately thereafter, it made a hand seal, and a strange red symbol appeared on the foreheads of Shi Chuankong's trio before fading away. Han Li gave a pleased nod upon seeing this, and the silver flame restriction on Hua Jang's nascent soul subsided at his behest, following which several translucent chains flew out of the glabellas of Shi Chuankong's trio before vanishing into his body. Their eyelids fluttered slightly before they opened their eyes, and all of them were looking deathly pale. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to release 3 balls of azure light that fused into their bodies, and their complexions instantly improved slightly as they sat up from the ground. "What happened just now, fellow Taoist Li?" Shi Chuankong asked with a dazed expression, seemingly having no recollection of what had just transpired. The dark-skinned elderly man and the woman in the red dress were also looking very confused. All of a sudden, a thought sprang into Shi Chuankong's mind and he hurriedly asked, "Where's Hua Jang? Did he get away?" "He's here. I thought you'd have some things to ask him, so I spared his nascent soul," Han Li said as he tossed Hua Jang's nascent soul at Shi Chuankong. Shi Chuankong faltered slightly upon hearing this, but still caught Hua Jang's nascent soul, and a look of burning fury and resentment appeared in his eyes. Hua Jang's nascent soul immediately began bowing in apology as it hurriedly said, "Please forgive me, Your Highness. I'm only acting under the instructions of someone else. If you spare me, I'm willing to defect to your camp. On top of that, I know a huge secret pertaining to you." However, Shi Chuankong had no intention of listening to it, and bright silver light began to glow from his hand as he closed his fingers. Hua Jang's nascent soul instantly began to warp, and it struggled in a panic as it screeched, "Wait, you can't kill me. My master is Taoist Master Bone Shine. If you dare to kill me, then he'll definitely avenge me." Shi Chuankong completely ignored the nascent soul's pleas. He closed his hand into a tight fist, and the nascent soul only had a chance to let loose a despairing cry before it disintegrated into specks of yellow light. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, but he didn't say anything. Given how close Shi Chuankong had been with Elder Qi, he had to have been furious that Elder Qi had been killed under such tragic circumstances. After taking a moment to compose himself, Shi Chuankong cupped his fist in a grateful salute toward Han Li as he said, "I must thank you again for saving me, fellow Taoist Li." "You're welcome, fellow Taoist Qi. However, I think it would be wise for us not to ignore what Hua Jang said at the end there. I'm assuming this Taoist Master Bone Shine is a great encompassment cultivator, right?" Han Li asked. "That's right. It seems like the current situation is even worse than I anticipated. Grain Mountain City is no longer safe, so we should leave this place as soon as possible," Shi Chuankong replied before taking several pills in succession. The recently concluded battle had caused quite a commotion, and even though no one had arrived on the scene yet to see what had happened, news of what had happened here was most likely going to spread in no more than half a day. "What do we do with them?" Han Li asked as he turned his gaze to the dark-skinned elderly man and the woman in the red dress. The injuries sustained by the two were far more severe than Shi Chuankong's, and even though they had already woken up, they were completely unable to move. They had overexerted themselves to the point that they were completely spent, and even their cultivation foundations had been severely damaged, so it was difficult to say whether they would be able to make a full recovery. "I'm the one being targeted here, so as long as I leave Grain Mountain City, there should be no further attacks here, and we can leave them here to recover from their injuries," Shi Chuankong replied. Han Li nodded in response. "Please wait here for me for a moment, fellow Taoist Li," Shi Chuankong said, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of purple light, which picked up the dark-skinned elderly man and the woman in the red dress, then also collected the bodies and belongings of Elder Qi and the others before carrying them away into the distance. Meanwhile, Han Li sat down on the spot with his legs crossed for some quick recovery. Shortly thereafter, Shi Chuankong returned, and Han Li rose to his feet. "Let's go," Shi Chuankong said as he summoned his flying carriage, and before long the two of them had vanished into the distance. Ali. Shi Chuankong's flying carriage had only just made it out of Grain Mountain City when he and Han Li spotted a streak of red light flying toward them. "Another one so soon," Han Li mused in a grim voice. Shi Chuankong's brows also became tightly furrowed as he immediately stopped the flying carriage. Inside the streak of red light was a crimson flying carriage, atop which stood a red-robed man, and the carriage stopped in its tracks over 10,000 feet away, following which the man declared, "Your Highness, I was instructed by the third prince to come and escort you." Shi Chuankong exchanged a glance with Han Li upon hearing this, then asked, "Do you have any proof of that?" The red-robed man swept a sleeve through the air in response, releasing a streak of red light that flew toward Shi Chuankong, who hesitated momentarily before raising a hand to catch the object inside the streak of red light. Han Li could see that it was a palm-sized crescent-shaped jade pendant, and there didn't seem to be any designs engraved upon it, but the lines on its surface were rather chaotic, giving it a rather indistinct appearance. Shi Chuankong flipped his other hand over to summon an identical jade pendant, which was also riddled with many lines. With one jade pendant in each hand, he brought the two together, and a burst of gentle white light arose from both pendants, following which they fused together to form a whole circular jade pendant. The lines on the jade pendants connected to form a portrait of a woman with a pair of pointy ears. It was a very simple portrait, yet it was somehow able to perfectly convey the gentle emotions on her face. Han Li could tell that the jade pendant had been crafted from a premium material, but it wasn't a powerful treasure by any means. However, it seemed to be very important to Shi Chuankong, and a warm and reminiscent look appeared in his eyes as he examined the portrait of the woman on the jade pendant. "It looks like he's telling the truth," Shi Chuankong said as he turned to Han Li, and only upon seeing this did the red-robed man continue to approach them. The man was quite youthful in appearance, and his facial features were quite gentle and soft, with the exception of his eyes, which were thin and long, resembling a pair of long sabers that were giving off a sharp gleam. "I am Cheng Zhu, and I was sent by the third prince to escort you back to Night Sun City, Your Highness," the red-robed man declared as he cupped his fist in a salute. "You're the blood-drop Marquis. I've heard my brother mention you before, and he's always spoken very highly of you. He says that you've slain countless devilish beasts outside the elegant Ripple Mountain range, and that you're one of his most prized subordinates," Shi Chuankong said. Zhu Cheng faltered slightly upon hearing this, following which a look of realization flashed through his eyes, and he smiled as he replied, "You must have misremembered, Your Highness. I've always been active in the southern primordial lands, and I've never even been to the elegant Ripple Mountain range. On top of that, with my lowly cultivation base, how could I possibly be considered one of His Highness's most prized subordinates?" Only after hearing this response was Shi Chuankong convinced that Zhu Cheng was who he claimed himself to be, and he cupped his fist in another salute as he said, "My apologies for testing you, fellow Taoist Zhu." "It's fine, it's a good thing that you're being so careful," Zhu Cheng replied, and he turned his gaze to Han Li as he spoke, clearly very interested in him. "This is fellow Taoist Li Han. He's been accompanying me on my journey and has saved my life on many occasions," Shi Chuankong introduced. Han Li also cupped his fist in a salute toward Zhu Cheng upon hearing this, and the latter returned his salute. "What are your plans from here onward, Your Highness?" Zhu Cheng asked. "We were originally planning to travel to Chuyu City from Grain Mountain City, but enemy forces had already infiltrated the city, and the teleportation formation in Grain Mountain City was destroyed, so I'll have to find another way to reach Chuyu City," Shi Chuankong replied with a wry smile. "Are you traveling to Chuyu City for the teleportation formation there?" Zhu Cheng asked. That's right. The teleportation formation in Chuyu City won't get us directly to Night Sun City, but it can take us to Sedge Prison City, and it's the fastest route back to the capital. Once we reach Sedge Prison City, it won't be difficult for us to fly back to Night Sun City even without using any further teleportation formations, Shi Chuankong replied with a nod. The teleportation formation in Chuyu City is indeed able to facilitate super long-distance teleportation, but it's not very accessible. Generally speaking, only those who possess the title of Duke or above can apply to use the teleportation formation, and unless it's used for official purposes, a huge sum of money will have to be issued to cover the teleportation costs, Zhu Cheng said in a slightly hesitant manner. I don't possess any lofty official title, but I hold an important status in the vast Origin House, and that will be enough for me to access the teleportation formation once. As for the fee that needs to be issued, I can take care of that as well. The hard part is getting to Chuyu City, Shi Chuankong replied with a nod. Seeing as the teleportation formation in Grain Mountain City has already been destroyed, we'll have to go to another city to teleport to Chuyu City, but even the nearest city to Grain Mountain City has to be around 10 years away, Zhu Cheng mused. 10 years, that's too long, Han Li said with furrowed brows. There's no helping it. As long as we keep our guard up along the way, there shouldn't be any major problems, Zhu Cheng disagreed. Do you know who it was that was wreaking havoc earlier in Grain Mountain City, fellow Taoist Zhu? Shi Chuankong asked. Who was it? Zhu Cheng asked. Hua Jang, Shi Chuankong replied. Isn't she the fifth princess's subordinate? Even she's coming after you, Zhu Cheng asked with a surprised expression. The problem here is that we killed Hua Jang, and prior to his death, he claimed that his master, Taoist Master Bone Shine, would be coming after us for revenge, Shi Chuankong explained with a wry smile. A grim look instantly appeared on Zhu Cheng's face upon hearing this. Taoist Master Bone Shine is a great encompassment cultivator, and he's extremely protective of his disciples. On top of that, Hua Jang is his most prized disciple. If he comes after us, I'm afraid I won't be able to protect you even if I sacrifice my own life, Zhu Cheng sighed. That's why fellow Taoist Li was saying that 10 years is too long, Shi Chuankong sighed. After a long silence, Zhu Cheng's eyes suddenly lit up slightly as he said, Your Highness, I have a potential solution to our current predicament, but it's just a matter of whether you're willing to try out my solution. Go ahead, Shi Chuankong prompted,